At the outset, I want to let all of you know that, as you'd expect, over the summer I've been talking to hundreds of Australians from all walks of life, in the street, on the beach, in cafes, even at the pub. And I've also been talking, as you'd expect, with my colleagues. As every Australian agrees, to live here in this country is to have won the lottery of life, because we are as free, as fair and as prosperous as any country on the face of the earth. But these are testing times for our country. 2014 was a tumultuous year that's reminded us to expect the unexpected. 38 Australians were shot out of the sky by Russian-backed rebels over the Ukraine. A death cult claiming justification in Islam is creating a new dark age over much of Syria and Iraq. And the terrorism it inspires has already hit Melbourne and Sydney. It was an anxious year for our well-being, as well as for our security. At last, the US is growing, but Europe is stagnating, and China, which has been our economic locomotive for so long, is now growing at its slowest rate in a quarter of a century. And the price of iron ore, our biggest export, has halved in just a year. In these troubled times, people expect more of their government, not less, and we must deliver for them. That's why a government with the plan and the will to strengthen our economy and to protect our nation is so important. This government is more determined than ever to make the changes our country needs. This government will deliver Australia's economic future because only a coalition government can. As Liberals and as Nationals, sound economic management is in our DNA. We've done it before and we're doing it again. More than ever, in troubled times, government has to protect our people and to stand up for Australian values. This government would hardly have taken the political risks it has without the conviction that some change is absolutely unavoidable if our country is to flourish. To create more jobs and more opportunities for families, we simply have to build a stronger economy. A stronger economy is the absolute foundation of a stronger Australia. And if the economy is stronger, everyone's life is so much better. A stronger economy helps everyone who's doing it tough. Parents wrestling with school fees and health costs, small business people anxious to keep their staff, seniors whose superannuation has to fund their retirement, volunteers wondering if they can still afford to serve the community, and young people looking for their first job and their first home. Building a stronger economy is the fairest thing we can do because it means more jobs, higher wages and more government revenue to pay for the services we need. Now, during 2015, our priority, this government's priority, will be creating more jobs, easing the pressure on families, building roads, strengthening national security and promoting more opportunity for all, with a new families policy and a new small business and jobs policy, and I'll have more to say about both of them today. But first, we do need to be candid about the challenges we face. The drift of the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd years cannot continue. Standing still on reform means going backwards on living standards. Just a few years back, under the Howard government, we were quite literally the envy of the world. In 2007, we had a strong and sustainable budget with a $20 billion surplus and $50 billion in the bank. But after 6 years of Labor, the deficit had blown out to $50 billion and gross debt skyrocketing to $667 billion. Under Labor, government was spending too much, borrowing too much and paying out too much dead money in interest alone. Now, we can't wait for a crisis like Europe to address this problem, because the solutions then will be much worse than the solutions today. Our problem is not that taxes are too low. Our problem is that government spending is too high. We are writing cheques that our children and our grandchildren will have to meet through higher taxes, higher interest rates, and yes, poorer services. Right now we're borrowing $1 billion a month. That's every single month, just to pay the interest on the debt that the former Labor government ran up. That's right, $1,000 million every month just to pay Labor's interest bill. That's a brand new tertiary hospital that could be built every single month if Labor's interest bill did not have to be paid. And without structural change, within a decade, we'd be borrowing $3 billion a month just to pay the interest on Commonwealth debt. So, let's spend the money we have to on the things we really need, and let's borrow where we must to invest judiciously in a stronger Australia for the future, but let's stop borrowing just to meet the ordinary expenses of government. Reducing the deficit means that interest rates will stay lower. Reducing the deficit means that taxes can be cut. Reducing the deficit means more confidence in the economy. And reducing the deficit is the fair thing to do, because it ends the intergenerational theft against our children and our grandchildren. We've never been a country that's ripped off future generations to pay for today, and under my government, we never will. On election night, I declared that Australia was under new management and once more open for business. Since then, new projects worth over $1 trillion have received environmental approval. The carbon tax is gone, so every household, on average, is $550 a year better off. The mining tax is gone, so Australia is once more seen as a safe place to invest. Big new road projects are now getting underway right around our country to overcome commuter gridlock, and the new Western Sydney Airport is finally to be built after 50 years of indecision. After 10 years of talk, free trade agreements covering more than 50% of our exports with China, with Japan and with South Korea have been finalised, and that means better markets for Australian farmers and lower prices for Australian consumers. The live cattle trade that Labor closed down in a panic over a TV program is once more booming again. There are now 15,000 new trade support loans because apprentices finally have the support that's long been offered to university students. And at last, the NBN is rolling out reliably and affordably. And despite the argy-bargy, in every sitting fortnight since last July, the Senate has passed at least one major piece of government legislation. And of course, the illegal boats that just kept coming and coming under the former Labor government have all but stopped. The Abbott government has stopped the boats, and only this government will keep them stopped. The Abbott government has scrapped the carbon tax, and only the Abbott government will keep it scrapped. My position on carbon taxes has been crystal clear. Since day one, as party leader, there will be no carbon tax under a government I lead. Now, at the election, the economy was weakening, the budget was hemorrhaging, and unemployment was rising. And today, despite all the headwinds overseas, the economy is stronger, the budget is improving, and the jobs market has strengthened. Jobs growth in 2014 was triple the rate in 2013, with 4,000 new jobs every week. New housing approvals are at record levels. The registration of new companies is the highest on record. Economic growth is now 2.7%, up from 1.9% just a year ago. Petrol prices are nearing 15-year lows. Home loan interest rates remain low and stable, and the September quarter had the biggest fall in power prices on record. But I'm not here to defend the past. I'm here to explain the future. People are sick of Australian citizens, including people born and bred in this country, making excuses for Islamist fanatics in the Middle East and their imitators here in Australia. It's not good enough just to boost the police and the security agencies, which we've done by restoring the millions ripped out by Labor, and to improve data retention, which we're doing. We have to tackle the people and the organisations that justify terrorism and act as its recruiting agents, such as Hizb ut-Tahrir. We've already made it an offence to advocate terrorism and made it easier to ban terrorist organisations. But I want to make it clear, if cracking down on Hizb ut-Tahrir and others who nurture extremism in our suburbs means further legislation, we will bring it on, and I will demand that the Labor Party call it For Australia. The police and the security agencies have told me that they need access to telecommunications data to deal with a range of crime from child abuse to terrorism, and as far as I am concerned, they should always have the laws, the money and the support they need to keep our country and our people safe. And with the world still feeling the aftershocks of the global financial crisis, people remain anxious about our economic sovereignty. I want to make it crystal clear that I am a friend of foreign investment, but it has to come on our terms and for our benefit. The government will shortly put in place better scrutiny and reporting of foreign purchases of agricultural land and better enforcement of the rules against foreign purchases of existing homes so that young people are not priced out of the market. These laws were not legally enforced by the former Labor government. Not once were they legally enforced by the former Labor government. So this year, the government's budget focus will be on strengthening the economy. Because we've already done much of the hard work, we won't need to protect the Commonwealth budget at the expense of your household budget. As the intergenerational report will show, more is needed to put the budget on a credible path to sustainable surplus, but as New Zealand has demonstrated, a good way to achieve this is not to make any unnecessary new spending commitments. We will always be looking for ways to make government more efficient and to crack down on waste. Governments should never spend more than they must, because every dollar government spends is a dollar you don't spend now or in the future. So any new spending will strictly be directed to making the economy stronger so that long-term revenue increases. Now, before Christmas, I said that over the break I'd be better targeting the proposed Paid Parental Leave Scheme and scaling it back in a family's package focused on childcare. I admire stay-at-home mums, as Margie was when our children were young. But I support better paid parental leave to maximise young people's, like my daughter's, choices to have a career and to have a family too. I accept, though, that what's desirable is not always doable, especially when times are tough and budgets are tight. As the Productivity Commission has said, and as mums and dads right around Australia have reminded me, the focus really does have to be on childcare if we want higher participation and a stronger economy. So that bigger parental leave scheme is off the table. Values and beliefs are important, but the most important consideration of all is what will best help families at this time. I know that many women in many families are working just to pay childcare because that was the Abbott family's experience when Margie first went back to work after becoming a mother. Childcare fees skyrocketed 50% under Labor, which also abandoned its promise to build 260 new centres. More affordable and more available childcare means less pressure on the family budget. More parents in the workforce means that more people will make a bigger economic contribution as well as a social contribution to our country. Women, after all, are our country's most underutilised source of skills and entrepreneurship. And if female participation in this country was 6% higher at Canada's level, our GDP would also be higher by $25 billion a year. So a better childcare policy is a good economic policy as well as a fairer family policy. We'll now consult widely on ways to improve the system of multiple payments, to keep costs down and to put more money into parents' pockets. As well as a families package, we're also working on a small business and jobs package. I admire people who take risks, who have a go and employ others. If you're a small business owner, it's likely that you've mortgaged your home in order to invest, employ and serve our community. Quite literally, you have put your economic life on the line for others. Every big business started off as a small business. The new industries of tomorrow are likely to be started by the small businesses of today. And the best antidote to sunset industries is sunrise ones, and these are most likely to emerge from an enterprising small business. At the heart of our small business jobs package, complementing our work on employee share ownership scheme and our reductions in red tape costs, will be a small business company tax cut on July the 1st, at least as big as the 1.5% already flagged. More jobs and better paid workers will only come from more profitable employers in a better position to employ people. Every new worker is generating revenue, so spending to get unemployed people into work, on childcare to keep parents in the workforce, on infrastructure to get people to their jobs, and on a small business tax cut to create jobs, will help to get the budget back towards the surplus that our country needs. Economic growth is the best and the fastest way to get our country back to surplus. Now, I hope that 2015 will see a much more honest national conversation between all of us with Australia's best interests at heart. I want this year's white paper processes on reforming the Federation and on tax to demonstrate Australians' potential for change for the better, rather than just politics as usual. Finding ways to make every level of government more efficient, more effective and more accountable is in every Australian's best interest and shouldn't be another excuse for cheap shots. Everyone who wants members of Parliament to lift their game has an interest in governments taking more responsibility for the services they provide instead of passing the buck. We will also be inviting constructive debate across the political spectrum on all options for a better tax system to deliver taxes that are lower, simpler and fairer. Unlike previous debates, we won't preempt the outcome by ruling things in or out before the process has properly begun. I do assure you, though, that this government wants to be remembered for cutting the overall tax burden, not for increasing it, for abolishing existing taxes rather than imposing new ones. And as for the GST, it can't and it won't change unless all the states and territories agree. It can't and it won't change unless there is a political consensus. And this means, leaving aside any minor administrative changes, that the base and the rate of the GST won't change this term or next unless it's supported by the likes of Bill Shorten and the Labor premiers. Both the white paper processes will be open and constructive. Stakeholders will be consulted. Submissions will be published. Any hearings will be open, and the states will have senior representatives on all the steering committees. Everyone who wants a say will have one, and the people will have the last word at the ballot box. Now, sooner or later, all responsible members of Parliament have to put the long-term national interest ahead of their short-term political interest, and there's no better time to start than now. So far, this government, and only this government, has had the courage to tackle the deficit, to protect our borders, and to build a stronger and more prosperous economy. As I said so many times before the last election, we will end the waste, stop the boats, scrap the unnecessary new taxes, and build the roads of the 21st century. And the results? Waste down. Boats stopped, carbon tax gone, and roads well and truly underway. 16 months on, we've laid a strong foundation, but there is more to do, and we're determined to get it done. Our country is at an important economic crossroads. There is a mess to clean up after 6 years of Labor chaos. The Rudd-Gillard-Rudd years cannot become the new normal, lest Australia join the weak government club and become a second-rate country living off its luck. You elected us, you elected me, to set Australia up for the long term. You elected us to be an adult government focused on you, not on ourselves. You elected us to make the decisions needed so that everyone who works hard gets ahead, aspiration is rewarded, and our children can look forward to more opportunities than we had. You elected us to keep you safe, and with every fibre of my being, I am focused on our national security challenges here and abroad. Standing up for Australian values is something I have done all my life. Leadership is about making the right decisions for our country's future. It's not a popularity contest. It's about results, it's about determination, and it's about you. Australia deserves the stable government that you elected us to be just 16 months ago. You deserve budget repair, no return of the carbon tax, no restart of the people smuggling trade, and no infighting. We promised that we would do our best to keep you safe. We promised you hope, reward and opportunity, and that's exactly what this government, this Abbott government, is working to deliver for you.